accessible campaigning, voting accessibility, and disabled owners of small businesses are topics discussed today with Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg Amore. I'm Annette Bourbonnier from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion, and this is the CriptheVote subseries. I am a 70-ish-year-old woman with dark-rimmed eyeglasses. I'm wearing a blue shirt and I'm sitting in a power wheelchair. Please take the time to free subscribe if you have not already done so. Give me a like and make some comments. I read all the comments. All podcasts are available with captions in English and other languages that are available in the settings of your computer. So I am honored today to welcome our Secretary of State, Gregg Amore, who is actually the first one I am interviewing in the CriptheVote subseries for this season. Others will be coming, but he was number one. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Annette.
Well, I'm happy to have you here. And I want to tell you a little bit about CriptheVote. Is a movement that was started by the late Alice Wong and her associates, Gregg Barrington and Andrew Pulrang. Sorry, I don't know them personally, but I mix up the names, but that's on me. It's because candidates never talk about disability in campaigns, ever. And if you suddenly ask them, I'll get back to you, and that's it. So we need to change that. We need to make sure you understand who we are and what it is we need from you. And so this is a tool for communication. I found that when I did it 2 years ago, it was very useful. Most everybody was very willing. So people with disabilities comprise 26% of the population. That means 26% of your voters. And that's a pretty big piece. If you eliminate us, you've got to get all your votes from only 3/4 of the voters. So this is why we do talk about this. And I'm really happy that you agreed to come on with this. All right. So the first thing I have to say to you is thank you for protecting our voting data. You and Attorney General Peter Nerone have done a phenomenal job. I know the battle isn't over yet. I understand there's a new onslaught, but it is state rights, and
it is. We're on the side of the law, Annette. It's very clear,
yes.
And that is about accessibility as well.
Yes.
And it's interesting because when you run for the office of Secretary of State, you can't help but talking about accessibility, right? Broadly, voter access, but also accessibility for disabled voters. That's part and parcel of what we do as a department, both on the election side and the business services side. But really what the federal government has attempted to do with these efforts to gain this private information is limit that accessibility to the ballot. And so, we're proud to stand up for Rhode Islanders. We're proud to stand up for the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 4, and we're proud to push back whenever the federal administration overreaches.
Well, I want you to know that people are noticing this and appreciating it, believe me. And like I say, our Attorney General, who I know is term limited, he's not running. And he has been doing a phenomenal job overall.
Yes, and he's been an excellent partner for us, he and his team, in our efforts to push back on these lawsuits.
Yeah, right. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any questions about, well, obviously you have a good idea then who we are, right? So,
yes.
okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the first bill that we put forward as an office this year, and the way that works is the Secretary of State's office can stamp legislation, but we need to find sponsors to take on that legislation, but it's on our behalf. And the first bill that we moved quickly to make sure that it was in place for this election cycle was to make sure that our online transmission, so it's transmitting a vote, usually from a computer, but it could be any device. Same way the military and overseas voters can vote. Let's say a military personnel is on an aircraft carrier, and so a mail ballot is not applicable in that situation. They need to send their ballot through a secure online transmission. We expanded that to disabled voters, and we have heard back from those disabled voters that this is the first time they've ever voted where they felt completely independent, and we're allowed to cast that ballot in a comfortable, independent manner. We're proud that the House and Senate has passed that bill. That is law. I helped get the original one passed as a member of the House of Representatives.
Well, I did see that. And that was part of my second question. We'll go to question 2 and then come back to question 1, because that is that is a big part of what is important to us, is to be able to vote. These attacks on voting rights are very scary, especially for people with disabilities. If you're already vulnerable, going to the polls is really intimidating. And then there is also the whole issue of what's happening with the mail-in voting. Even though they can't stop mail-in voting through one law, they're trying to manipulate the postal service.
That's correct. And I think that people don't understand how complex that is. Now, here in Rhode Island, we should be able to be nimble enough to be able to adjust in case the courts do not stop that. But there are going to be many voters across the nation whose vote will be impeded because the Postal Service is requiring markings on election materials, in particular, mail ballots, that some rural and financially strapped communities will not be able to provide, and those ballots will not be delivered. This is a big deal, especially for those in the disabled community who depend on mail ballot voting.
Right. I don't think it's really legal for him to do that, but
no, we're trying. We're part of a lawsuit that is attempting to stop that and put a stay in place on that executive order, and we hope that we will prevail.
Right. Well, I appreciate that as well, because again, those are our rights. That's our superpower. That is what we are able to affect. When we want to make change, we have that right to vote. And
the first right. I like to call it the first right, because all other rights are protected by that right.
Exactly. I agree. Even the right to speak out, like I do. So
right.
Yes. And that's how that First Amendment is the first one.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and it is really important, and I'm glad to hear that's going on, both in the lawsuit and with so we'll be able to vote electronically this year.
Yes, and it's important that people are aware of that. That is an option, and again, it creates an independent voting situation in place of what did not exist prior to that. And we had great help from our advocates, the Disability Rights Rhode Island folks, and others who came forward, testified, and said how important this was in casting an independent vote.
Right. And I do believe I sent in written testimony.
Yes, you did. You did.
Because being able to vote right from home and say, okay, I don't have to face that. I don't have to worry about if my body's working that day to get to the polls.
Right.
And
well, we should always err on the side of enfranchisement. Right. And I think what's happening on the federal level now is we're doing the exact opposite. Yes. We're creating barriers so that it's more difficult for people to vote, or they're intimidated around the process. Right. And it should be the exact opposite. We're celebrating the nation's semi-quincentennial this year, right? July 4th is 250 years. And the most important paragraph of that Declaration of Independence is regarding the consent of the governed. Right. And that means all of us, all of us. And in order to give our consent, we have to have the ability to vote in an unimpeded fashion.
Right. And I do encourage everybody everybody to vote. I know I'm nonpartisan in this particular forum, but yeah, vote, absolutely.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
exercise that right religiously. Um,
It's a precious right, and it is not
yes,
guaranteed.
no,
It's you have to act upon it, as the great John Lewis said. You must act upon that
yes,
right.
yes. I also like another great John Lewis saying, you got to make good trouble.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah, he's one of my heroes.
Me too.
I'm old enough to know when all the stuff he was involved in was happening.
Sure,
So,
sure. I was
yeah,
just born when
yeah,
the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act was passed, but because I taught United States history for nearly
mm,
30 years as a high
yeah,
school history teacher, I'm well aware of
right.
all of the history around that.
Yeah, yeah. It was important history. Watching it unfold was
And
really
we're seeing some of that being chipped away at now by
right.
the federal
Yeah.
courts and
Hmm.
by the federal administration. We have to stand up and make sure that we push back.
Right. We do. And that is for everybody. I mean, it's not just those of us with disabilities whose rights need to be protected, which they're constantly under attack under this administration. Um, but the rights of people of color, people in the LGBTQ community, um, even rights of immigrants, because they do have rights. They're human. They have human rights, and we have to. I never thought I would hear how important it is to protect human rights in this country, because of how
And due process and due
due
process.
process.
And,
Absolutely.
we that
Yeah.
should be a settled issue in this nation. It's very clear in the Constitution that in both areas where that's specifically mentioned, the
Mhm.
wording is person, not citizen,
Right.
and so
Right.
due process is an essential part of being an
Yeah,
American.
that's true. That is true. And yeah, I'm glad we're all on the same page on this. So, okay. So I do want to let everybody know that there is a link to using the accessible voting machine if you go to the polls. That link is there, and it will be in the notes to this podcast. I looked at it. It's great. It shows you very clearly what you need to do. Um, yeah.
And we are thrilled with the partners who worked with
Yes.
us, not only to make sure that we purchase the right machine, because this is a
Right.
federal mandate,
Right.
and it should be,
Yes.
but we want to make sure we purchase the correct machine and the most user friendly one, and the one
Right.
that had the most
Mm,
features,
right.
because to be honest, the previous iteration of this machine was limited.
Right.
It was not as accessible in various ways. And our partners, especially at Disability Rights Rhode Island, they tested this out for us.
Yeah.
They offered feedback, and voters, all voters, can use the express voting machine. But I do want to point this out, because some of the misinformation around voting is that
Mm,
our voting machines are somehow connected to the internet and can be somehow tampered with. What the express voting machine does is offers accessibility features, a whole host of them, that
mhm.
allow someone to create their ballot.
Right.
And then that ballot is printed, it's checked by the voter, and then it's put into the counting machine. So there's no way to manipulate that particular voting machine,
Right.
because the voter has the ballot before them that's been printed based on their selections using the accessibility features, in some cases,
Right.
of the express voting machine. So thank you for posting that. It's really important that people
Yes.
know that
Right.
exists and how it works.
Right. Well, the Governor's Commission on Disabilities sends has a bunch of volunteers that go out on
Yes.
election day. Then we
Yes.
make sure that machine is up, running, voting, accessible, etc.
Yes. And we thank you. And we
With
thank you
that,
for that partnership as well.
right. Yeah. So we really want it to be so everybody can vote. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about campaigning. Where and how we campaign. I mean, this is a small state, and many small businesses are still kind of dragging their feet on the whole accessibility thing, even though that means they lose money when they don't let us in. We are 26% of the population.
Right.
Um, but some of those places are favorites among some political candidates. And so we are, I actually have available a pledge to accessible campaigning that is downloadable from the Nothing Without Us website. And I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Yeah, please do.
So we want everybody to pledge to campaign accessibly, because when you don't, you're telling 26% of your potential voters that they don't matter, or that we don't matter, because I'm one of them. The other thing that you're saying to everybody is, okay, I'm going to uphold this law, but I'm not going to uphold this law, because it is federal law that, the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is 36 years old this summer. And so when you choose to campaign in an area, in a venue that is not accessible, you're telling us that, well, you don't think that's an important law, so you're not going to uphold it. And that's been a battle that we have to deal with a lot. It's not like we can say, okay, well, yeah, we went through that stop sign, but we do stop at all red lights. We can't do that in life. And choosing to be accessible or not be accessible in your campaigning efforts is telling us that you're choosing not to stop at the stop sign, so to speak.
Right.
So, that's important to us. It's very
Sure,
important.
it should be.
Right. And people are, what I'm trying to do is to have people with disabilities become aware as a group of the power we have as a voting bloc, which nobody ever considers us as a voting bloc, but we are the largest minority in this country.
Sure.
And we encompass all the others. So there's intersectionality. We are everybody, because anybody can join us anytime. We don't recruit, but our doors are open. So, so.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it's important. And we spend a lot of time because we oversee the business services division. We spend a lot of time talking to business owners in particular about how they can go beyond the ADA, and how they can make their businesses more accessible, which benefits them.
Well, it does.
First and foremost.
Right. They're leaving a lot of money on the table when they're not.
And we try to provide in that process the ability for connectivity to organizations that can support those businesses becoming more compliant. But I'll tell you this: we're invited to a lot of grand openings. So a business will open. They'll want the Secretary of State or our representative to be there to cut the ribbon. And we've been very intentional about making sure that we are not present unless a business is fully accessible. And there was a case with an insurance company who asked us to do that. We complied only after they complied with clear signage around accessibility to that building. And so we're trying to do our part around that, which is connected not only to our business services division, but just in general to supporting not only the letter of the law in regard to the ADA, but the intent.
Right. And I appreciate that, because the ADA is the floor, not the ceiling.
That's
it is the minimum requirement to meet the law. And that's always being adjusted as new technology, new information comes in. But it does, the main thing about the ADA is that you cannot discriminate, period. That is the whole thing. And so I have a hard time sometimes getting some businesses to understand that myself, but I'm working on it with you.
Right.
So it's a common goal there.
And it's constant too.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yes,
constant.
it is.
You're never finished with that goal.
Right. No, I'm not sure we'll be finished in my lifetime for sure, but it's not that I'm not going to keep trying. Understanding, disability rights, disability justice. Remember that not only are we part of every population, you have to remember, you're also going to probably join us someday if you live long enough. Most everybody
Right.
will.
That's
Um,
exactly right.
yes, right. And, there are also a lot of things about accessibility that exist that other people now take for granted. They don't know how what we fought for is something that is also helpful to everyone else.
That's right.
It's called the curb cut effect because
Oh, it's
with,
absolutely
some mothers and parents, I should say, with baby strollers and, the automatic doors in the grocery store. I mean, there's delivery people using the curb cuts,
right.
all of these people. That's because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's because of disability rights. And
Right.
that's important for people to know.
And that's why it's so sad that the term or the letters DEI have been so misinterpreted, misrepresented.
And lacking.
Inclusion is a big part of that, right? And
Right. It is. It is.
inclusion is just what you're talking about, right?
Right.
And it's not designated to one group of people.
No,
And I think there's a misunderstanding around what businesses, what government,
right.
what people have attempted to do around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but particularly around inclusion. And you just described that as well as I've ever heard anybody describe it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Um, that means I'm doing my job. This is
Right.
good. Yes. And you'd be surprised how many organizations think DEI is race and gender. We almost are never included. Disability, only when you force the issue is it
Right.
included. And that's too bad because it keeps people with disabilities from moving forward very often, especially when, two big areas where it's a problem is academia and healthcare. You'd think that we would be smart enough to have the most intelligent people in our lives, understanding how important we are, but that is not the case. But
But I think going back on the history of this office, I think it
yes,
was incredibly important when Jim Langevin served as Secretary of State
right,
because it brought front and center the need for accessibility not only in elections but in the halls of government.
right,
So that this building, the building I'm sitting in now, is
right.
accessible. And by the way, this building could be much more accessible. There are limits, of course, in an old structure, but there are ways to improve this, and we hope to continue to push to make sure
Right.
this building is more accessible to all Rhode Islanders, and not just the tourist areas, which are by and large very accessible, but the committee rooms
Right.
and the rooms where hearings are held, and Rhode Islanders need to be able to access those places and speak their mind on a myriad of issues.
Right, because that is a barrier for many of us. I mean, I know how to get into the building and where things are. Parking, you know, parking an accessible van anywhere near there is a challenge.
It's a challenge. It
A
is.
very, and even if you're parking as far away as Providence Place Mall, then you've got that awful brick sidewalk that you have to traverse to get to the State House, and
Right.
it's a challenge. It is very challenging. So that's why I did a lot of written testimony this year.
Yeah. Well, that you bring up a good point too, because I am a great advocate for what we experienced, and I was in the House of Representatives during the pandemic, and I'm a
Mhm.
great advocate for having the ability for Rhode Islanders to access those hearings online or by phone and
Mhm.
testify virtually. And I think we should move toward making that permanent. There are some minor exceptions, but right now it's an in-person process where you certainly can write in, but
Right.
sometimes you need to be heard. And I,
Yeah.
I, I
Mhm.
think as much as we can expand those hearings and meetings so that they're accessible either virtually online, like we are speaking today,
Right.
or by phone, I think enhances our democracy.
Yes, I will agree with that. And if you need an ally for that, you know where to contact me. Okay. And I have a big mouth. I talk a lot. Um, so let's talk a little bit about small businesses.
Sure.
I am among those who have a very small business. And one thing that I am trying to move the state and government in general away from is these poverty rules. Like if you earn this much over a certain limit, oops, all your health care goes away and well, now you can't work at all. And so, this is a challenge for all of us with disabilities. It's a tightrope and it's a stressor. It's a real big problem. But there is a minimum tax for small businesses if you're, incorporated at all. And I'm wondering if there's any way in the future we can look at maybe changing that for super micro businesses, if the owner is a disabled person. Once there is, regular income coming in where there would be a tax anyway. I think that we should be equal, but I think we need more time to get that equitable footing. And I think that's something to look at.
Yeah, I think that's smart, and I think that's certainly worth the legislature. They've convened study commissions on everything from A to Z. This is something that's worthwhile to look at, and I would be 100% behind you, and also support a commission to look at how that minimum tax structure can be adjusted based on size of business and disability ownership. I think that's a wise thing to look at. I think when you have a report that you can stand on, and use and say, look, this is what we found through our work, I think that enhances that. But I know that many gubernatorial administrations have looked at that corporate minimum, right, and tried to reduce it, or they've tried to make adjustments to it. And I think there's a reason that many have looked at it, because it does have gaps. Right. And one of the challenges we have with public policy is when we create blanket policy, you mentioned blanket policy on poverty percentages, right? There's always a gap where you actually create a worse situation for a number of folks than they were in prior to the level, right? At the level. And that gap coverage or lack of coverage is a real public policy concern. And so I think in this case, we'd be trying to address that, and I would support helping in those efforts to move the General Assembly toward a commission that would look at that.
I think that'd be great. It really would. I am actually working also on, like, why is this poverty rule even here? And I hear from some people that ordinarily seem very smart and very people that I truly like, but the idea behind it that I hear back from them is, well, we don't want people double dipping or cheating, and I'm there like, really?
It's the exact same mentality,
right?
It's the exact same mentality on voting rights, right? If you're under the assumption that there's massive fraud, then you're creating policy to stop massive fraud. But what you're doing is you're disenfranchising people because the problem that you created does not exist. Right.
But you have created another problem.
But you've created a worse problem. You've created a problem that actually exists as compared to one that did not exist when you were trying to address it. And that's the exact same thing that you're talking about here.
Yeah, right. So I do appreciate that your support in all of these efforts, and looking forward to.
Annette, I know you've spoken to our business services folks down at West River. We've tried, and I give Secretary Gorbea, my predecessor, a lot of credit, and we have expanded on her efforts to make the business services division extraordinarily accessible with after hours, with virtual programming, making sure that people can access us in varied ways that are convenient to them, because we want entrepreneurs to act on their dreams, and we want them to establish their businesses, and we want those businesses to be successful. So we've tried to expand all of our offerings beyond the workday, outside of the office building, and in ways that serve our entire population, but certainly our disabled community.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I thank you for coming and joining me. Do you have
Thanks for
anything you
having me.
want to add?
Well, I'm just gonna add what you have already said, which is you have to vote.
Yes.
It's
Oh, please.
essential that
Yes.
everyone takes that responsibility seriously. In the last presidential election, only 65% of Rhode Islanders who were eligible to vote cast a vote. And that's not good.
No.
We should be among the nation's leaders, and we should be
Right.
voting well above 75%. That's the only way we can protect and preserve American democracy, is for Americans to get off the sidelines and into the game, and make sure their voice is heard.
Right. I've heard some startling statistics on that, even on a national level. Because one, I forget which pollster it
Yeah,
is.
we're at the national average.
Right. And
Yeah.
they do some of the polls based on people who didn't vote last time, and I'm there like, wow, that number is staggering.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that was, you know, brought into my attention. I've not brought to my attention, but the need to vote was like part of my culture growing up. That
Me
was
too.
very important,
Me too.
and being informed. And we need to do that religiously now. We need to find new ways to sort information because we don't have Huntley Brinkley or Walter
That's right.
Cronkite
That's
or
right.
people anymore. So we need to make sure that we're getting good information, learn how to assess information,
That's right.
and vote
Amen.
every single chance you get.
Amen.
Yeah. So, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ned. I appreciate it.
All right, let's keep in touch. This year is the year for the midterm elections. For Rhode Island, that means it's the year all of our state legislators and senators and all the major office holders, governor, lieutenant governor, treasurer, secretary of state, and attorney general are elected as well. If we want change, we need to inform all of them that they work for us. They are our employees. We need to tell them who we are and what we need to make life fair for us. We need elected officials who will listen to us, and we need to tell them that what will work for us will also benefit the state. So provide them with a job description. Let's make sure everyone who is running in the midterm and state elections knows something about disability, about the problems we face, about policies that need to be reinforced or changed. So in the spirit of the late Alice Long and her associates Gregg Barrington and Andrew Pilrain, let's keep hashtag CriptheVote alive. Use that hashtag on social media to make our voices heard. I am running a CriptheVote sub-series on this podcast for everyone running in Rhode Island to come and talk about disability issues and policies. This includes those running for election or re-election for Congress, Senate, and the major offices, legislature, and local races. So during the 2024 election, I had a pretty decent response to requesting participation and from the office holders and candidates. And I hope for the same or better in 2026. So far, it is looking good. The invitations are being accepted. Now, as listeners to Nothing Without Us, you can participate in this. Let me know, who do you want to hear from? What do you want them to know? What questions do you want answered? What would you like to see? And let me know if you want to join me in that interview and information session. Nothing Without Us should be a place for many voices to be heard. While I think I'm pretty in touch with disability issues, I'm sure some of you will think of things I do not. If this is to be a lively community, then you should have a seat at this table. It is through empowering ourselves that we will be able to protect our rights. So let's do it. You can tell me in the comments who you want to hear from, what questions you want asked or issues discussed. And if you want to join me in this interview, let's make all of our voices heard. So I have begun inviting current lawmakers and known candidates. Number of appointments have already been scheduled, and others have already agreed to participate, and we're working out scheduling for them as well. So this will be nonpartisan, and I want to include questions and comments you submit as well as my own. So the focus of these discussions will be about disability and how laws and policies affect us. Anyone running for office needs to declare by June 24 in Rhode Island, so getting started now is not too soon. I have published a pledge to accessible campaigning that is posted on Patreon. Please download it and give it to every candidate you encounter. Let them know that the disability population comprises 26% of their voters and that they need to consider this when campaigning. Signing it will tell that 26% of voters that they matter, that we matter. It will also indicate that those candidates do not pick and choose which laws to uphold, a quality we desire from our representatives in government. So thank you for listening. I'm Annette, and this has been Nothing Without Us. Please subscribe to this podcast. Even free subscriptions will give you access to all the regular and important episodes, including the entire CriptheVote subseries. Share this podcast and make some comments. I do read them all. While basic subscriptions are free, there are benefits to paid memberships, including early access to some postings, special postings only available to paid members, and a monthly live episode to those on the activist tier. My goal is to make this a lively community where voices will be heard. The second live episode has been posted. Sarah Everhart-Skills joined me for a discussion of developing the agenda for change. What do we need to see? Our third episode will be on July 2nd, and like the first two, will be free to all subscribers, even free subscribers. After that, access will be available to those on the activist tier and to people who purchase a ticket. But check out these live episodes for free. Just free subscribe if you haven't already. You can now purchase memberships on an annual basis rather than just on a monthly basis, and you can gift a membership to someone else. Tell your friends they can find this podcast at patreon.com/nothingwithoutus, on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette.